today's session, we'll be looking at minimum viable product. Initial part of the session, what we will do is we'll cover the basics of MVP. We'll talk about the build, measure, learn framework of MVP. We will walk through an example to understand it better. Then we'll talk about the riskiest assumptions in the product that you are building. And then I will try to wrap the basics with another example. In the second part, we will look at a detailed perspective about MVP. We will go more in depth. We'll first talk about MVP for a feature, which is probably more frequent in an established company. We will try to understand the different types of minimum viable product that we will be using. We will try to understand the difference between minimum viable product, prototyping, and minimum desirable product. And finally, we will understand the different scenarios for building a minimum viable product. Let us try to understand what a minimum viable product means. A minimum viable product enables you to assess if your product is worth the time and resources you would spend on it. You can release it into the market to keep your users engaged sometimes, but more importantly, also to assess how your users experience the product. So broadly, the MVP has some of these below uses. It is a validation of your product hypothesis and assumptions by use of only minimal resources. And since you are validating your hypothesis and assumptions with minimal resources, this becomes a very essential tool for startups, which are usually limited in resources. And also ensuring that you don't create a product that users do not need. A lot of times in bigger organizations, MVP is used not because there is a resource constraint, but more importantly, because they don't want to build a product that will end up not being used by their users. And also to collect data from the real customers quickly and easily. You can do a lot of surveys, right? Asking them whether they will actually like this product. But actually building a very quick minimum viable product or a basic product will allow you to actually get the real data from the customers. And also an MVP in a lot of organizations is a starting point. It allows you to build a better product through iterations and refinements. You will start with your first version of MVP. Probably you will validate some of your hypothesis and then use that to iterate and refine the product. And like I already said, do remember MVP can be done for both new and existing products. What is the build, measure, learn framework for MVP? Building an MVP would help you validate your hypothesis and check which minimum features are required to launch your product. But how exactly would you build your MVP? This is where the build, measure, learn framework comes into picture. The build, measure, learn framework is a quick way to build an MVP and test it out. Like the name suggests, it has three components. The first component is the build. That's the first part, where the MVP of your product is built and released in order to test your core assumptions. The second part involves measuring the performance with your users. This is where you learn whether your hypothesis is working or not working, right? And finally, you have the learn part, where you gather data that has been measured earlier and improve your product. So in the learn stage of this framework, you have to decide whether to pursue or pivot. Essentially what happens is, let us say you get some insight, right? There are two decisions that you can take. Let us say the insight is that your hypothesis is wrong and users actually don't like your product. You can probably pivot or move to a totally different idea or move to a new version which tries to match the customers or users expectation. On the other hand, let us say the data tells you that the product that you have built in your MVP is actually something the users are happy to use. Then that means that your hypothesis is validated. Now you pursue. Pursue basically means to continue with the same strategy and goals for your product. While pivot means to change some or all aspects of your product strategy. And either of these decisions are taken based on the insights you gather from the learn stage of the build, measure, learn framework. Let us look at an example of using a build, measure, learn loop. When Zappos was started, their strategy was to sell shoes online. This was, long time back when Amazon was there, but still shoe selling online was not very popular, right? No big player was doing it. Probably there are some players here and there, but not player who were popularly used by the customers. So no one knew whether it was a working strategy or not. Now the biggest assumption in that stage of the world, right, for Zappos was whether customers will buy shoes online. So they basically assume that yes, if I sell shoes online, customers will buy it. So that's a major assumption. And since they had no data to prove it, right, they could have done two things. Right? They could have built a massive product, which would have been a huge risk. Because let us say if customers actually do not want to buy online, then all of it would have been a waste. Or they could have gone with an MVP approach. Realizing that unless they actually validate this fundamental hypothesis that customers will actually buy shoes online, trying to build a full scale product is a risk, and they decided to follow an MVP approach. How do they go about through this process using the build, measure, learn framework? In the build phase, the MVP to validate this assumption that customers will buy online, right, was to just take photos of various shoes. They went to local stores, took some photos, and then posted it on a web page. Customers don't need a very sophisticated tech product or inventory for it. So this was their MVP, just a website, not even a sophisticated website. You can presume it's like a web page where there are photos of shoes that they had taken from the local stores. In the measure phase, right, which is basically just a step, right, it's not independent, it will be part of their MVP. They measured the demand for shoes online, the common sizes looked for, and the types of shoes that customers look for. So what are the three they try to measure? Demand for shoes online. What is the demand? What was the size that people are looking at, shoe size, and the type of shoes that they were looking for. And in the learn loop, based on the results measured, they have two options, right? Like we discussed earlier, either persevering, which involves continuing with their strategy, or pivoting, which of course involves changing some or all aspects of their product strategy. When they understood the data, they realized that there was actually a demand for shoes online. People were actually very willing, just based on the MVP, right, to buy products from them. And based on this data, now that there is actual data that customers are buying from them, right, they decided to persevere and did the next iteration as per the build, measure, learn loop. An important point here, right? So what happens typically in build, measure, learn loop is that it's not a single step, as in it's not one set of actions, right? It's not like they would have validated their hypothesis and then left it. Essentially what happens is it is a very iterative process. That's how companies are built or products are built, right? So even in this case, what they did is in the first iteration, they validated an hypothesis that customers will build online. Now that the hypothesis is validated, the next step was to validate some other hypothesis, right? Or check something else that came as an additional input from the first step. From the second iteration, right, what they learned was customers actually wanted faster delivery. So while in the first step they decided that online selling is going to work, they didn't stop with it. They went with the second iteration, right, where they built some more capability so that now instead of just being a web page, it was actually a product where people can buy shoes. But in the second iteration, they learned that customers wanted faster delivery. And based on this learning, they designed their entire logistics. That became their key differentiator also. So if I have to summarize it, in the first iteration, they validated an hypothesis, which is that customers will buy shoe online. In the second iteration, they were able to identify a customer need altogether. Essentially, they realized that they cannot just persevere with the current model of slow delivery, even if it was based on online purchase. It was a new need that they were able to identify based on the learning that they got from the second iteration, which allowed them to improve their logistics. If you get time, do read about Zappos founding and its history. It's a very interesting story to read about. Now let's understand what does identifying the riskiest assumptions mean. One of the most vital goals of a minimum viable product is to validate an hypothesis that you may have about your product, hypothesis or assumption. But a lot of times it's actually not just one assumption, right? You may have more than one assumption. So it becomes important to identify which one requires validation the most, because you cannot have too many hypotheses validated in a single MVP, right? It's a little complicated. So if I have to put it in points, assumptions that cannot be validated through any means leads to MVP validation. If let us say you could have validated through a survey or some other way, right? Or through existing data, right? Then probably you don't have to build an MVP because you already have data to validate your assumption. But in cases where you cannot validate it that way, you always need to do MVP validation. The second important point to notice, if the assumption is not the riskiest, meaning even if the assumption is wrong, if there is no big business loss, then those assumptions are low in priority. In the Zappos case that we saw earlier, right? The riskiest assumption was that customers would buy online. If let us say that assumption was wrong, then there was no Zappos at all, right? There is no business. On the other hand, let us say they had one more assumption, that people need nice packaging when it is delivered after placing order online. That's not a very big assumption, right? Let us say it's wrong. Nothing is going to happen, right? It's not going to affect their business. So you need to be able to recognize what is the riskiest assumption, which is essentially the assumption which, if wrong, is going to cause a huge business loss for you. If I have to rephrase it in a different way, the assumptions which, if wrong, can break or end a product, since core offerings depend on them, are called riskiest assumptions. So, as a PM, you would have certain assumptions about your product, its customers, the implementation of the product, and the market. The first step of building a minimum viable product is identifying the riskiest assumptions. Below is an example of riskiest assumption. For Airbnb, the problem solution is through an online platform, it is easy for people to find and rent places offered by hosts. I'm sure a lot of you would have used Airbnb. But when they came up with this construct of Airbnb, right, where people will just be able to find and rent places offered by hosts on an online platform, there are quite a few assumptions. The number one assumption was people were willing to host and stay in someone else's home. This was a very risky assumption, right? The second assumption was people are willing to pay X amount to stay in someone else's house, because essentially they are making it a platform where you pay to get a stay in someone's house, right? Which means it's an assumption. You don't know whether people will be willing to pay money. The third assumption was people and host are able to build the mutual trust needed after meeting online. Now there were three assumptions that were initially considered, right? When they decided that Airbnb is something that they want to build. Now, which is the most riskiest assumption, which if fails will essentially kind of put their entire business in risk. If you look at the second and the third, right, there are ways to solve for it. For example, let us say they realize that that mutual trust is something that is needed for them to stay, and it's a little difficult to build it just by meeting online. Maybe there are other ways to do it, like ratings, reviews, maybe putting more pictures, which essentially, anyways, they did in the future. But the one assumption, which if fundamentally is wrong, Airbnb would not have been a product at all, which is basically people are willing to host. and also stay in someone else's home, right? Which is a big assumption, right? It's a make or break assumption. So that becomes the riskiest assumption. And how did they validate this riskiest assumption? They validate through a build, learn loop, basically build, measure, learn loop. In the build phase, they took photos of a room and put on a web page, and they measured some metric. Majorly, they measured the paying us who are turning up, and from this, they were able to learn that yes, people were actually willing to pay for a room that was just put on a web page, which validated their first assumption. So far, we have looked at minimum viable product at a basic level. Going forward in this part, we will try to understand MVP with a more detailed perspective. We will look at MVP for a feature. MVP for a product is essentially when, let us say you are a startup and you are trying to start a new product or build a new product, you will use MVP to even build your product out. Or you may be an existing company, but let us say you are trying to build a new product in a new area altogether. Like for example, when Amazon tried to launch an AWS, right? That's a totally new product. On the other hand, a lot of times, right, when you're a product manager in a company, you would be building an MVP for a feature because there could be an existing product, and then somewhere based on your research and all that, you would have identified some need for a customer and you wanted to build a new feature. But you know that you can never be 100% sure, and probably let us say you don't want to burn too much of resource. You will first validate your primary hypothesis or the riskiest assumption by building an MVP for the feature that you want to build. So what I will do now is, I will try to walk you through the various components of the MVP in detail, basically from the build, measure, learn framework that we learned in the first part, right? And also give you for each of those parts or components an example, walking you through the MVP for a feature. So what is build? We already also looked at an example, right? In the build phase, basically an MVP has to be built around your core ideas and assumptions. You conduct relevant experiments to gather data and then apply the learning to next cycle of product development. For example, let us take a restaurant app. The existing features in use, let us say, are menu support, inventory support, booking support. Now, let us say you want to build an additional feature, business intelligence report. What will you do? You will follow the below mentioned steps. The first step would be you will do user research. You will understand the existing methods used by restaurant owners to track sales, because anyways you are building a business intelligence report, correct? Once you have done your user research, you will build a persona. Based on all the user research you have done, you will include information about who you are building for and the respective aims and objectives of that particular persona. And then for that persona, you will build use cases. Now let us take a persona, Alankar. So for a restaurant owner like Alankar, just took over the business, the use cases would look like the below. What would be the use cases that Alankar would look at? You would want to track sales figures. You would want to track average user rating. Know reasons for low rating. You would want to know the most as well as the least ordered items. Know the most as well as the least ordered cuisines. Right? This is just another variation of the items. You would want to know peak hours for business, and you would also want to know variations in order values on weekdays, weekends for lunch, dinner. Of course, as a business owner, why would you need it? Sales figure is very obvious. User rating so that you can improve the experience for the customers, and that can be done only if you also knows the reasons for the low rating. You would want to understand more details about the items, because you may decide to drop a cuisine, right, or improve the number of items available in a particular cuisine if that cuisine seems to be very popular with the users. And based on the details about the order values and the peak hours, right, you would probably decide how to manage this server base, basically the waiters at the restaurant. These would be his use cases. Now, once you have an extensive set of data, carried out user research, built a persona, and the corresponding use cases, the next step would be to build an MVP. Typically, when you are working as a product manager in a company, let us say you are the product manager responsible for building this particular feature, right? Business intelligence report. And your company actually has that product, which is basically a restaurant software. You would just like that not build an MVP, right? Whatever I just discussed would be the first set of steps you would do. And then the next step would be to build an MVP. For the restaurant business, you have to build an MVP to send weekly email reports to the restaurant owner. The email reports can be sent out either using bulk mail providers like MailChimp or SendGrid. The email reports which are sent out to restaurant owner should consist of information in the form of charts, analytics, right? So that he can actually get more insights, right? It's, or more importantly, it's very easy for him to understand whatever data you are presenting him. So the email report will include information, graphs, analytics, which are then tracked to gain insights as to which piece of information is used extensively by the restaurant owner. So what are we doing? We are essentially tracking even the type of report that the restaurant owner is using. Why is this important for us? Because this is needed to gain insights as to which data points are used most by the restaurant owners to further enhance the feature. Correct? So your goal was to build a business intelligence report. You identified some set of use cases for that business intelligence report for your target persona. But will you just blindly build it and not even measure whether all the reports you wanted are the ones that the users are regularly going to use? No. What you will do is, whenever you are sending these reports, which will be weekly, you would have additional insights. This is for you as a product manager to see which report is seeing. Is he interested more in the customer ratings report, right? Or is he more interested in the cuisine report? So all that would be the insights that you as a product manager would be interested in. Let us say the cuisines report that you have built is not used by restaurant owners at all. Probably you will not improve it, correct? Or even drop it in the future versions. Now this brings us to the next steps. That is measure, which is basically once the reports are sent out to restaurants, the metrics are measured against the following: email open rate, number of clicks, and feedback. After measuring metrics, you have to analyze the information, which brings us to the following. Of course, I'm trying to give it at a very high level, right? When you say number of clicks and feedback and all that, you will try to get it at multiple cuts. Basically, which report has multiple clicks or more clicks, right? You will learn. The data that is accumulated will point out certain facts, which is used to ascertain future actions. So for example, let us say in the example that I have walked you through, the emails have 40% higher open rate. Once these steps are accomplished, a PM goes ahead and builds the feature. Again, in the above example, the PM includes the following tabs in analytics dashboard based on MVP analysis. So what was the MVP? Well, your goal as a product manager was to build a business intelligent software or feature for the larger restaurant product. Because you are not 100% sure what will work, what will not work, you decided to actually build a report, right? Like an offline report with your tools and all that. It's not a software or a product for the restaurant owners yet. And then send those reports by mail to them. So whoever were the customers of your restaurant software would be getting these reports by mail weekly. And you also measured how the customers of your restaurant software are engaging with this particular feature. Now this feature is an MVP. It's just a mail, right? With graphs and all that. And based on it, you saw that with the set of reports that you had created, this is actually pretty good. You see some numbers, right? I just gave some example. But obviously in the real case you will measure, and let us say in this example you realize that this is actually showing a good open rate and all the right set of reports that you have put right are clicked and there is good positive feedback. Now based on this insight that you have got, you actually go ahead and build your analytics dashboard. So what will the analytics dashboard have? It will have orders which will track the number of orders, order value, least order item. You will have the ratings tab within your analytics dashboard which will track ratings and variation in sales. You will also have something called as time analysis. This will track the peak business hours across various restaurant offerings. You can use graphs, charts, tables to convey information depending on the level of usage seen for the MVP. Where in the report that we sent, right, like an email weekly, you would have seen whether people are liking a particular graph or not liking it. Based on all that insight, you can actually add those items also in your dashboard. Right, before I move on to the next part, right? So to quickly summarize, when you are building an MVP for a feature which is different from MVP for a product, in this case, right, the product exists, which means that you already have users for your product. And in this specific example, the product was a restaurant software and you are a product manager within that larger team, and your responsibility is to build a business intelligence report or a feature within your product. While the final product would be basically like an analytics dashboard, which all the users who are using that restaurant software can see within their login. Since you won't know whether this will work or not, you will go with an MVP approach, which involves the initial steps, which is basically your user research, right? Deciding the persona and then identifying their use cases. But once you have determined your use cases, you can never be 100% sure whether those are the right set of use cases for the users. That's just based on your research, right? So what you will do is you will build an MVP. MVP means something that is very low cost or least resources. And you realize that instead of building a very sophisticated dashboard, probably just building it like a mail report and sending it in bulk to your customer regularly or to all your customers, right? Uh, on a weekly basis, you are able to measure some insights. And now those insights tell you that people are actually very happy with this report. One, they are actually opening that mail you had sent, which means that they really value that report. Two, you also see better engagement with that report that you had sent by mail. You get positive feedback. Now, based on all that insight, you go ahead and actually build the analytics dashboard. So the MVP for the feature was actually the report that you send by mail, while the final product would be the analytics dashboard, which would look like what I just explained, right? Orders, ratings, and time analysis. And additionally, based on any other insights you got from the initial MVP analysis, you can also add graphs, charts, tables, etc. Now let us look at the different types of minimum viable product. While in the Airbnb example in the previous part and the Zappos example in the previous part, we actually had some kind of a very basic working product in a way, right? You also saw that even a mailer could be an MVP. So the framework to create any kind of MVP is the build, measure, learn loop. But there is no one way to go about it. Like in the previous examples, you can adopt several methods to build your minimum viable product and test it out with early adopters. So I'll walk you through some of the basic ones, right? Obviously there could be many number of ways, but these are the major ones. One, it could just be an explainer video. Even that is an MVP. A video briefly explaining the value proposition of the product. Maybe you have a way to measure people's engagement and actual interest in that product even through that video. Maybe you will see number of likes or the feedback, right? Or number of people who are watching the video fully. So even an explainer video could be an MVP. A landing page also could be an MVP. An email link or an ad that takes users to a sample web page. Wizard of Oz is basically an MVP which appears fully functional, but the operations are carried out manually. So for the customer, right, or the ones whom you are trying to test this product on, it will look like a fully functional product, but it is actually manually carried out. Maybe let us say, I'll just give you an example, right? Let us say you want to actually build a very sophisticated product that will give users the type of jobs they should apply for if they share their resume. Well, the actual product could be a very data science driven product, right? Probably that is not the way to move forward, because let us say that product is actually not something that users want. Let us say they don't want to actually get these job recommendations based on their resume. Then building that sophisticated product is a failure, correct? So the MVP would be basically to just make it look like it's a very sophisticated product, but manually backend, right? You can just have a set of folks who can actually read the resume manually, and based on what they read in the resume, suggest some jobs to the users. While the users, it is a fully functional product. The actual operations are carried out manually. And if let us say that MVP actually is successful and you realize that people like this kind of a product, then you can go ahead and build a proper product, because you cannot scale it with just manual people, right? So this is Wizard of Oz. Then there is a minimum viable product type called as concierge. There is no appearance of functionality and services provided manually by a human attendant. In fact, in the earlier days of Ola, not a lot of you would know it, right? You could actually call a phone number, and then a human attendant will say we'll allot a cab to you, and then the backend team, which is not technology, basically humans again, will be calling a driver, right? And tell him that, hey, if you are near this place, can you just go and get that customer or meet that customer. Now this is a functionality that appears full, right? But actually it is manually done by a human attendant. And people also know it was a human attendant. It was not like Wizard of Oz, where you thought it was a fully functional product. And then there is piecemeal, which is basically using existing products or platforms rather than building your own. And then the single feature, which is basically an MVP, which focuses on only one feature. So to quickly repeat what I just walked you through, there is the explainer video, landing page, Wizard of Oz, concierge, piecemeal, and single feature. Well, these are some ways in which you can build your MVP. There could be a lot more. Right? These are the popular ones. A lot of times you would have heard of the term MVP, but you would have also heard of prototyping and minimum desirable product. If you are new to product management or still trying to break into product management, I'm sure there will be a lot of confusion on what each of these terms mean. They're different. So what I will do is, since we have come to the end, I will try to explain the difference between each of these. The concept of minimum viable product mostly is the one that is confused with prototyping. So let me start with clarification in this. MVP differs from prototype in the following way. In the MVP, you test the user's response to the value proposition. A lot of times price point is also considered, because you want to see whether people would pay for the product if it's going to be a paid product. And it also tests business viability of an idea. So essentially the test is around the value proposition, right? The value proposition could be the price point, or it could be some other things, right? Like in Airbnb case, it was about people willing to stay in someone else's house if it's offered. Now you also test the business viability of the idea in a lot of cases, like scalability. Sometimes you want to test a particular distribution model and see whether it's the right distribution model. Sometimes you also want to test your marketing strategy. All these are done in MVP. It's not just about price point or value proposition. It's also about business viability. Sometimes it's also used to test business viability. Now, on the other hand, a prototype is purely about how a product works. It demonstrates how a product works. Price point is not usually considered. It tests the working of the product, basically the concept and the technology. While the MVP's goal is to understand and validate what the user wants or whether the user is okay with the proposition that we are going with. It's more from a business product perspective, while in the prototype, it's more from technology or concept perspective. Maybe even in the Airbnb case, right? Once they had built a fully working product, right? Even that would have been a prototype, because let us say they wanted to build something sophisticated that can actually make the photos easily viewable for the users. And if let us say they are not too sure about the technology, that's a prototype. Or in the case of Amazon, let us say they already came up with the AWS and they believe that that is something that the users will want, but what they want to test could have been the technology, whether you can actually offer cloud services like that. So this is the difference between MVP and prototype. As a product manager, MVP is about value proposition validation from the user's perspective. Prototype is about testing the concept and technology. Basically, it's to demonstrate our product works. A prototype demonstrates the concept and technology behind a product, whereas a minimum viable product tests the user's response to the value proposition. While a minimum viable product looks at the product development process as a business problem, the minimum desirable product looks at it from a more human centric perspective. So MVP is all about product development from a business angle, right? The MDP or minimum desirable product is more from a human centric perspective. Is this the desirable product which can build with minimum effort? All right. Now that we are clear about the difference between MVP and prototype and minimum desirable product, let's look at different scenarios for building a MVP. The process of building an MVP and testing it out can be vastly different in different scenarios. For instance, MVP for a new product is different from MVP for an established product. We saw that difference in the example of both Zappos and Airbnb, which were MVP for a new product, and in the case of the restaurant example, where it was MVP for an established product. Also, there are distinct challenges you would face while building an MVP for an entire product as opposed to a feature of a product. So, what could be those challenges? An MVP for a new product is used to validate its hypotheses and assumptions. On the other hand, an MVP for an established product faces challenges as users are accustomed to using the product a certain way. For example, even in the restaurant example, right? When you are building the reports, maybe people are used to the design of the restaurant software in a particular way that any new capability could also make it a little complex for them, right? A lot of times MVP for an established product faces challenges from the users since they are very accustomed to this product and in a very particular way. And also building an MVP for a product can be a challenge because you lack data, market validation and user feedback. An MVP for a feature of a product needs to provide a value proposition that would ensure adoption by users while at the same time not adding complexity to the product. These are all some of the challenges that you would face when you are building MVP for a product as well as when you are building MVP for a feature of a product. So if I have to put it in a very easy format to understand and remember, MVP for a new product is used to validate hypothesis or product idea. No data on the people who would be willing to use the product. You don't have any data about the people who are willing to use the product. An example of a new product is Ola Cabs. When they started, right? Now it's a new product. You're building an app where people can place requests for cabs. Difficult to tell whether service is going to work. Of course, they started with the telephone, but the primary hypothesis was people were willing to actually book cabs in that manner. Now this is a very difficult scenario where it is very difficult to tell whether the service is going to work. Now on the other hand, in the case of MVP for an established product, users are accustomed to using the product in a certain way. Users are resistant to changes in how they consume the product. I'll give you an example, Instagram stories, if you remember, right? You can go and read about it. It was very difficult to predict and tell if users would adopt the feature. Now that was the challenge they had because Instagram users are used to Instagram existing in a particular way. And this has happened in Facebook's case also. To continue, MVP for a product is built with little or no data. There is no market validation for the product idea that is existing already. And a lot of times there would be no users who could give feedback before you are building it. MVP for a feature of a product has some of these points, right? Should provide a value proposition that ensures adoption. It should not add complexity to the UX because the users are already accustomed to a particular way of using the product and needs to be in line with the rest of the product. So that could be a design principle, right? It could be targeting a particular set of users. It cannot be in discordance with the existing product. It has to be in line with the other product, the product within which you are building the feature. All right, we have come to the end of this topic. It's a heavy topic, I know, and more importantly, just by reading it, you can only learn so much. But this is one of the most important concepts in product management. As a product manager, MVP is something that will constantly be building because you will be coming up with newer and newer ideas. And a lot of times, right, going ahead and just asking your engineer to build your idea out is not the most prudent step. So I would suggest that do read up a little bit more on MVP. If you are not still clear, you can watch this video again and start implementing these principles whenever you have an idea for a product. All right. Thank you. And do feel free to add your questions or comments in the comment section.